The way she laughed with him, mouth tilted just enough, head thrown back like it was instinct, made the back of my neck burn. Not with jealousy, with realization. I wasn't supposed to be there. Everyone in that room wore secrets like designer suits, and I came in wearing truth. I could feel it. I could feel the way conversations shifted when I walked past. Not because they feared me, because I wasn't part of it, because I hadn't been invited by them. I was dragged in by someone who forgot I was real the moment the door closed behind us. She had her hand on his shoulder before we even got our coats off. Said it was just a hello. Said he was like family. Said I was overreacting. But I hadn't said anything yet. I just watched. For 42 minutes, I watched her become someone else. Wine glass never empty. Eyes flickering toward corners of the room I wasn't allowed to see. The kitchen? Off limits. The den? Private guests only. I was offered a drink by a man who didn't remember offering it twice. And when I asked her, "Are we leaving soon?" she said, "Can you not?" So I left. Not dramatically. I didn't slam any doors or yell something quotable. I didn't even say goodbye. I just eased the front door shut behind me and stepped into the night like I was a coat being returned to a rack. 7 minutes later, the text came. Come. No context. No apology. Just that single, hungry word. And suddenly I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything. I just needed to know, what had I walked away from, and what was I about to walk back into? The driveway was still packed when I came back. A pair of men in sharp suits stood near the front gate, laughing about something I wasn't supposed to hear. One of them looked me up and down like he was scanning a barcode, like I didn't belong here because I didn't, but I nodded anyway. Slid past them with my hands shoved in my jacket pockets, heart pounding like I was breaking into my own life. The music had gotten louder in the hour I was gone. Or maybe I had just sobered up enough to realize how forced it all felt. Laughter coming in bursts, too loud, too well-timed. Everything inside that house felt rehearsed, like everyone knew their lines except me. I walked back into the main room, and no one noticed I'd ever left. Not even her. She was still on that same couch. Not next to her boss this time, but close enough that they were talking over the rim of the same wine glass. Their bodies weren't touching, but their comfort was. You know what I mean? That quiet understanding between two people who've practiced this before. Like they had nothing to prove to anyone, not even themselves. She glanced up for a second and saw me. Our eyes met. Nothing happened. No smile. No surprise. No guilt. She just blinked and looked right past me, like I was another man blending into the polished walls and curated playlists. I stood there, 5 feet away from her, and felt the floor tilt. Why did she text me? What did she want me to walk back into? Was I supposed to see something and pretend I didn't? I moved toward the kitchen, trying to gather myself. On the way, I overheard one of the guests whisper, "Is that her husband?" It wasn't curiosity. It was discomfort, like they'd been caught mid-scene and I was the camera they didn't authorize. In the kitchen, I poured myself something. I don't even remember what. My hands were shaking, and the glass clinked against the counter. A man I didn't recognize walked in, nodded, then leaned in slightly and said, "You're Laurel's husband, right?" His voice was casual, like he was confirming a trivia question. I said nothing, just nodded. Then he smirked, not with malice, but with knowledge, and muttered, "Brave of you to come back." Then he left. I stood there for a full minute, breathing shallow, counting the sounds of a room that no longer felt mine. And then I made a mistake. I pulled out my phone and opened her text again. Come. Just that word. I stared at it like it was a puzzle. Then, almost by reflex, I typed, "Why?" No answer. I pressed send again. "Why did you want me to come back?" Still nothing. But when I glanced up, she was gone from the couch. Gone from the room. And just like that, I felt the shift. Not the music. Not the crowd. The house itself felt different. Like something was moving just beneath the surface. Like I had wandered too far past the line they all pretended didn't exist. I put down my glass, and I went looking for her. The hallway was dim, but not dark. Soft golden light spilled out from under each door, just enough to show me reflections on the hardwood. The laughter behind me was fading, and ahead, there was only silence. Thick, polished, expensive silence. Every step I took felt like trespassing, like I was peeling back the drywall of something no one wanted me to see. I passed a bathroom, empty. A guest room, empty. A coat closet with someone else's blazer crumpled on the floor. Why was it even open? I pushed forward, adrenaline rising in my throat like it wanted to speak before I did. I had no idea what I was even hoping to find, or afraid I might. Then I heard it. Low voices. Not moaning. Not scandalous. Just close. Closer than they should have been. I stepped softly like a kid caught out of bed and stopped just outside a door that was cracked open. From the gap, I could see her back. She was standing near a bookshelf, glass in hand, shoulders tense, head tilted slightly toward whoever was speaking. I couldn't see his face, just the outline of his sleeve and watch, silver, sleek, the kind you wear when you're trying to impress quietly. I didn't know his name, but I knew who he was. The host. Her boss. The man she couldn't stop orbiting. I didn't barge in. I didn't shout. I just stood there, inches away from the truth, and listened. His voice was calm. He came back. She hesitated. Yeah. And? She exhaled lightly like she didn't want to answer. I thought maybe he wouldn't. That silence afterward? It wasn't shock. It wasn't shame. It was mutual understanding. A space held between two people who had already made peace with betrayal. I backed away before they noticed. My fingers trembled as I typed out another message, this time more desperate than before. Are you okay? No reply. Not even a glance at her phone from where I stood moments ago. I walked back to the hallway entrance, stood in the middle of that golden cage of a house, and stared at the guests who didn't care whether I existed. I felt so stupid. So unnecessary. But I didn't leave. Instead, I did something I never thought I would. I went into the garage. It was mostly empty, just luxury cars lined like trophies, clean floors, that faint scent of rubber and cold air. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for space. And I found something else instead. Her purse. Sitting on a metal stool next to a wine crate. Alone. Unzipped. Phone inside, screen lit up. I stared at it. No passcode. Her messages were open. The last one she sent? Not to me. Don't let him stay long. He doesn't do confrontation. And the response? Already handled. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't carelessness. This was choreography. They expected me to come. They knew I'd leave. They planned for me to come back. And I was already playing my part. I stood there in that garage for a long time, long enough to hear my own pulse in my ears. The cold metal stool next to her purse mocked me like a prop in a scene I wasn't meant to walk into. I kept staring at the phone. At that message. Already handled. What did that mean? Handled what? Me? I wanted to put the phone back where I found it. Just slip out quietly again and go home and pretend like I never saw it. But I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. Not from fear, not exactly, but from something worse. I realized I was afraid of knowing everything. Because once you know, you can't ever not know. I backed out of the garage and shut the door gently behind me, careful not to let it click. I felt like a thief. Only I wasn't stealing anything, I was just slowly realizing how much had already been taken from me. I made my way through the hallway again. The lights felt brighter now, or maybe it was just that I was more exposed. Everything inside me screamed that I shouldn't be there. That this was more than cheating. This was manipulation. Layers deep. I returned to the living room and found her. Sitting on the edge of the couch now, alone for the first time all night, head down, staring at her drink. Her phone wasn't in her hand anymore. I wondered if she noticed it was missing. If she knew I'd seen the message. She looked up and spotted me across the room. For a split second, her face tensed. Not surprise. Not guilt. But something calculated. Her expression reset fast, like someone hitting backspace mid-sentence. She stood up quickly and crossed the room like she was in a rush to erase something. There you are, she said, reaching out, touching my shoulder. Her tone was soft. Too soft. Like she thought I needed managing. I thought you left again. I wanted to scream, why did you text me to come back if you didn't want me here? But I didn't say that. I just blinked and muttered, I saw your message. Her fingers stiffened slightly on my arm. What message? She asked, tone playful, but her eyes were locked in. I didn't answer. She took a small step back, then smiled, the kind of smile you give a neighbor when they ask if everything's all right and you've just finished crying. I didn't mean anything by it, she said. It was just tension. You know how things can get. I didn't know how things could get. Not like this. She slipped her hand into mine and tugged gently, leading me back toward the party, toward the other guests, toward the noise. Let's just try to enjoy the night, she whispered. I should have pulled away. I should have demanded the truth right then and there. But I followed. Like a fool. Like someone hoping that if he just plays along long enough, things will reset. But the air was different now. People were glancing at me. Not openly, but just enough. A shoulder turned here, a sudden sip of wine there. I wasn't part of this world. I wasn't even an accessory anymore. I was something else entirely. And then it got worse. Dorian, the boss, came over and smiled like he'd been waiting for his cue. Glad you came back, Vernon, he said, voice smooth, almost mocking. We missed your energy. Energy. That's what they called it. I tried to smile. I failed. He handed me a drink I didn't want and clinked his glass to mine, as never leaving my face. To honest men, he said, then took a sip. I didn't drink mine. Laura laughed. A fake, sharp laugh. Then turned her head and whispered something in his ear I couldn't hear. He nodded. Smiled. Then walked away. And she turned to me, lips barely moving, eyes flat. Stop making this harder than it is. That's when I knew. They didn't care if I figured it out. They were counting on it. I didn't reply to what she said. Stop making this harder than it is. What kind of sentence is that? Like this was a job. Like I was an obstacle. Not a person. Not a husband. Just an inconvenience to manage through a carefully timed exit. The glass in my hand felt heavier. I still hadn't sipped it. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust her. I didn't trust anyone in that house. There was something mechanical about it all now, like I was walking through a set built to keep me occupied, keep me quiet, keep me out of the room where the actual script was playing out. And then I started to see it. The subtle signals I'd missed all night. The woman with the red earrings near the fireplace who glanced at me then nudged the man beside her. The way the server, same one who had offered me a drink earlier, deliberately avoided my eyes now. Even the playlist. The same slow, hypnotic jazz loop, like the mood was pre-decided. Like no one was surprised by anything anymore. I told Laurel I needed the restroom and broke off from her. She didn't protest. Didn't follow. Just nodded and turned back to Dorian, who conveniently reappeared at her side the moment I stepped away. I didn't go to the restroom. I slipped upstairs. I know how that sounds. Like a violation. Like I was snooping. But let me ask you this, when you're standing in the ruins of something you believed in, and every corner of the room is hiding part of the story, don't you want to see the whole thing? The second floor was quieter. Carpeted. More intimate. Lights lower, walls darker, like it wasn't part of the party at all. I passed a guest room empty. Another, door shut, faint music inside. Then one door, partially open, caught my eye. Inside, a home office. Dimly lit, but enough to see a tablet on the desk, still glowing. I hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside. The tablet wasn't locked. It was open to an app one didn't recognize. But the screen showed a paused video. I tapped it. And there she was. Laurel. In this house. Not tonight, another night. Same dress. Same boss. Different angle. Different moment. She was sitting on the couch in what looked like this very room, laughing. But not casually. Intimately. Leaning in. Kissing him. The tablet buzzed almost on cue, as if to remind me it wasn't finished ruining me. A message popped up on the top banner. Just a name, Dorian. And the words, let him stay longer next time. He's useful when he doubts. Useful. That word clanged in my head. I didn't know what they were playing at, but I was a tool in it. I backed out of the room like the walls had started whispering. My heart pounded like I'd run a mile. I rushed back down the stairs, but I didn't go outside. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to see what they'd do. What she'd do. If she'd pretend. If she'd try to lie again. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, the energy had shifted. People were looking at me differently now, not just like I was out of place, but like they were waiting for something. That's when I noticed it. My drink. Still on the table where I left it untouched. Except now it was gone. I hadn't moved it. But someone had. I turned around slowly, scanning the crowd. She was gone. Dorian too. And that's when I realized. This night wasn't spiraling out of control. It was never meant to end cleanly. I moved through the crowd like I didn't belong in my own skin anymore. I wasn't even pretending to fit in at that point. I was scanning faces, looking for hers, feeling more like a man inside a maze than a guest at a party. The chatter around me blurred into static. Words bounced off the walls and dissolved before reaching me. I remember someone brushing my shoulder, someone else offering me another drink I didn't take, and a third person whispering something I didn't catch because all I could focus on was the growing silence around her absence. Laurel was gone. So was Dorian. The couch where they'd sat together all night now held a jacket and a half-empty glass of red wine, his probably. Her purse, I noticed, had disappeared from the garage. They'd taken it, cleared the scene, reset the props. I turned the corner into the hallway again, the same one I'd walked earlier. But this time I opened the door at the end, the one I'd avoided before. It wasn't locked, just quietly waiting. Inside was a different world. Not louder, not darker, just private. It wasn't a bedroom. It was a screening room. Leather chairs, black soundproofing, the faint scent of cigarettes someone thought the candles could mask. A projector sat idle, blinking. I stepped in slowly, and that's when I heard it, barely audible. Voices. Not coming from this room, but close. A door to the side was slightly ajar. I crept closer. The voices became clearer. Two people. A man and a woman. And it wasn't a fight. It was something colder. Calculation disguised as comfort. He'll figure it out eventually, she said. Her voice was even. Controlled. I don't need him to figure it out, Dorian replied. I just need him to keep doubting until it's too late to matter. And then, softly, her again, he still thinks I sent that text because I wanted him back. A pause. Then laughter. From both of them. I felt something twist in my stomach. Not jealousy. Not even heartbreak. It was the shame of having trusted her. Of having believed that maybe I mattered. That even if she'd made a mistake, there was a version of the night where she regretted it. But there wasn't. There never was. They knew what they were doing. Every second of it. Every glance, every drink, every movement in that house was part of a pattern I'd been too naive or too loyal to see. I backed away again, more careful this time, and closed the door without a sound. My hands were shaking now. Not out of fear, but fury trapped under a lifetime of politeness. I wasn't built for confrontation. They knew that. That's what made me the perfect piece in their arrangement. A quiet husband. Observant. Passive. Predictable. But I wasn't going to stay that way. Not anymore. I walked back into the main room, now emptier than it had been. People were beginning to leave. I looked around and saw her by the kitchen bar, glass in hand, chatting with someone like nothing happened. Dorian stood a few feet away, talking to another couple. Laurel turned her head slightly, met my eyes, and for the first time, she flinched. I said nothing. Just watched her squirm in that 1-second flicker before she composed herself again. She came to me cautious. Hey, she said. You disappeared. I found your tablet upstairs, I said quietly, watching her face. She froze. Not in a dramatic way, just a pause. A twitch in her brow. A subtle change in posture. You went upstairs? She asked, like I'd broken a rule. I went looking for you, I said. But you were already busy explaining how little I mattered. People were still nearby. She knew better than to raise her voice. You misunderstood, she said quickly. Whatever you think. I know, Laurel. I don't think anything. I saw. And I heard. And for the first time, the woman who had rehearsed every expression all night didn't know what face to wear. She looked around like the walls might save her. Like the party itself might swallow the moment whole. But no one was watching now. The crowd had moved on. There was no stage left. Just the two of us. And then I asked her the question I knew she'd never answer honestly. Why did you invite me here? She looked at me. Looked through me. And then she said something I still can't forget. Because it was easier than lying again. She turned and walked away. And that's when it hit me. This night wasn't just about betrayal. It was about burying me in it while I stood there, smiling. I didn't chase her. That's what she expected, that I'd follow, beg for an explanation, give her the final word, let her close the book on my behalf. But I didn't. I stood still, watching her vanish down the hallway again like the house had pockets only she could slip into. And as she disappeared, I realized I didn't want the truth from her anymore. Because I already had it. And it was worse than I ever imagined. So I went back upstairs. Not because I was curious. Because I was done guessing. I walked past the room with the tablet, past the guest rooms, past the curated illusions meant to impress. And at the end of the hall, there was a door I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't elegant like the others, it looked older, heavier. Out of place. Maybe that's why I finally trusted it. It wasn't locked. Inside, the light was low, but what caught my attention first wasn't the furniture. It was the wall. Lined with photographs. Printed. Pinned. Annotated in small, careful handwriting. Every one of them featured a couple. Not always the same ones. Always polished. Some dressed for formal events, some candid, some not meant to be seen. But in at least a dozen of them, I saw Laurel. Sometimes with Dorian. Sometimes with other men. In one, she was whispering something into a man's ear while another woman watched from behind a curtain. In another, she was seated in a backyard with a champagne flute in hand, Dorian behind her, smiling like a director watching his scene unfold. There was a pattern. But it wasn't about infidelity. It was about documentation. This wasn't cheating. It was observation. They weren't having affairs. They were orchestrating events, framing them, recording them, capturing expressions, movements, reactions, like some twisted psychological experiment dressed as a social circle. And I had just become the latest subject. I stood there in the stillness, scanning the notes next to one of the pinned photos, handwritten lines beneath an image of Laurel laughing with another man while holding hands with someone else. Observe response. Test boundaries. Note delay in confrontation. My stomach turned. I wasn't just betrayed. I was being studied. My mind raced. What was the point of this? Money? Power? Blackmail? Or something darker? Some obsession with control? With mapping emotional thresholds? Then I heard it. A soft click behind me. I turned. And Dorian was there. He didn't flinch. Didn't pretend to be surprised. You weren't supposed to find this room, he said calmly. I stared at him. My fists clenched before I even realized it. What is this? He walked in slowly like he'd done this before. Every person reveals something in stress. Most don't know what they're capable of until they're pushed past the polite edge. You were fascinating. My jaw tightened. You're insane. Maybe. Or maybe we're just honest about what people do when they think they're in love. He walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small black folder. Inside, photos of me. Taken tonight. At the bar. On the balcony. In the hallway. My face at every angle. You think you were invited to a party, he said. But this was your screening. I stepped back. For what? Dorian tilted his head slightly. Let's just say Laurel likes men who don't ask too many questions. But you surprised her. The air went thin in my lungs. So what now? I asked. You humiliate me and move on to the next? He smiled gently. No, Vernon. You've already moved on. You just don't know it yet. Then he left me there, standing under the glow of 100 moments I didn't consent to. And that's when I understood. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a selection process. I didn't stay in that room. I didn't demand answers. I didn't take the folder. I didn't scream or break something or march back downstairs to humiliate anyone. I just stood there for a few more seconds, long enough to feel the weight of what had happened, to let the betrayal settle into something quieter, like dust after a collapse. Then I turned, walked down the stairs, and through the front door without saying a word. The valet didn't make eye contact. He handed me my keys like he knew. Maybe he did. When I pulled onto the road, I didn't even look back at the house in the mirror. Whatever they were doing in there, whatever twisted performances they put on for one another, it wasn't mine to fix. It wasn't my mess to carry anymore. I stopped 3 blocks away, parked, turned off the engine, sat in the silence, and I breathed. For the first time that night, I really breathed. I could still feel the sting, the confusion, the shock of it all, yes. But beneath that was something else. A kind of stillness I hadn't known in years. Like a part of me that had been buried under all the pretending, all the accommodating, was finally beginning to surface. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No apologies. Just one final message from her. Where did you go? I didn't answer. I deleted it. Then I deleted her number. The next morning, I didn't wake up to chaos. I woke up to sunlight. My apartment smelled like coffee and quiet. I made breakfast and ate it slowly. No one talked over me. No one rolled their eyes. No one made me feel small for being exactly who I am. In the days that followed, I didn't spiral. I didn't chase closure. I didn't try to expose them or beg for explanations. I started walking again in the mornings. Listening to music I liked. Calling people I hadn't spoken to in years. It was like rediscovering myself in pieces, one honest moment at a time. I even smiled, really smiled, when a woman at a bookstore complimented my taste in novels. Her name was Elise. She was nothing like Laurel. And that was the point. I don't know what Laurel is doing now. I don't care. Whatever strange world she and Dorian live in, their experiments, their games, their soulless theater, I'm not part of it anymore. Because somewhere between the hallway and the front door, I made a decision I never thought I could. I chose me. And honestly, that was the first real thing I'd done in a very, very long time.